live now, folks. Willie, go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Willie Poinsett, and I am one of the co-founders of Respond to Racism in Lake Oswego. This is my friend, and she'll wave, and collaborator Lisa Adato from Lake Oswego Sustainability Network. On behalf of both of our groups, we'd like to thank you for attending tonight's Mayor Candidate Forum, and we'd like to welcome our panel of candidates. We'd also like to welcome and acknowledge any candidates or elected officials who are watching. Normally, we would ask you to stand and be acknowledged, but as you know, these are not normal times. So just keep on waving or not waving because we cannot see you waving. So just know that you're appreciated. As many of you know, Respond to Racism was formed following a racist incident involving fellow community members that compelled us to sit down and talk about racism in our city. Our mission is to educate and empower Lake Oswego residents and institutions with the tools to combat racism in all of its forms and make Lake Oswego in Oregon a better place to live and or visit for all residents and visitors of all races and ethnicities. We also hold monthly meetings, community meetings, protests, rallies, celebrations, and have committees working on programs such as police reform, monitoring city meetings, and engagement with our youth. We invite you to join us. And now, my friend, Lisa Adato.
Thank you very much, Willie. We're very excited to be hosting with Respond to Racism. I was one of the co-founders of the Lake Oswego Sustainability Network, which was founded in 2013. And our purpose is to promote sustainable practices in Lake Oswego. Our long-term goal is to create a safe and healthy future for ourselves and for future generations. And we do this through a triple bottom line of environmental safety, prosperity, and social equity for the residents of Lake Oswego. We hold events, we engage the community through outreach. We have multiple partners and multiple action teams. For example, we have a schools action team, an interfaith team, a climate team, a transportation team, and a number of other teams. And we work with our partners on projects to increase clean energy, reduce waste and toxics, promote clean water and air, reduce climate emissions, and more. There's been a groundswell of community advocacy, engagement, and support among residents and city and school officials to chart a more inclusive and sustainable course for the future of Lake Oswego. And that brings us to why we're here tonight. We're hosting this forum because we want to play a role in helping voters make an informed decision about the future of the city that we all love. Lake Oswego has a lot of strengths as a community. Our schools, our neighborhoods, our parks, the heart and spirit of the people, among many other things. However, we've not always had a great reputation when it comes to issues relating to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this reputation is perpetrated today, which you all know if you read the LO Review or follow posts on our social media or next door. In addition, we've seen a lot of support for sustainability among our city leaders and among residents. But we know that as citizens of a suburban area, we need to do much more to reduce climate emissions and toxic materials so that we can pass along a safe environment for future generations.
We're all here tonight because we care deeply about this community. Our mayor plays a key role in setting the tone for city leaders and in charting the course for our city. This includes fostering a welcoming and inclusive environment for all community members. We're very fortunate to have three mayor candidates who have a passion for making Lake Oswego a great place to live. We'd like to thank each of them for being here tonight and for being willing to step up and dedicate themselves to civic service. Before we get started, a couple of quick announcements. We will take a 5-minute break partway through the forum, and you will be notified. Tonight's forum is being recorded on YouTube, so please let your neighbors and friends know about it. Okay, let's get started. We'd like to introduce our two esteemed moderators for the evening, Maya Gordon and Anna Marie Gunther. Both are 2020 graduates from Lake Ridge High School. Maya is a student at the University of Pennsylvania. She is beginning her studies at home online because of COVID-19. Anna Marie Gunther is a student at UCLA and majoring in bioengineering. She's also beginning her studies at home. With that, I'd like to pass the mic to our two moderators who will briefly share the format for the evening and get us started.
Thank you, Willie and Lisa. When we begin, each candidate will have 1 minute to introduce themselves and offer an opening statement. We'll go in alphabetical order. After opening statements, we'll then ask the candidates questions with varying response times ranging from 1 to 2 minutes. We'll let you know how much time is allocated to respond to each question. We'll alternate who answers first by going alphabetically, starting with a different candidate each time. We'll call your name when it's your turn to answer. Partway through, we'll take a quick 5-minute break. When we come back, we'll do a lightning round, which we'll explain when we get there. Then we'll have more questions followed by closing statements.
Terry Kramer will be our timekeeper. For 1-minute response times, the timekeeper background will turn from green to yellow, indicating you have 15 seconds left on the clock. You will see a red background when your time is up. For 90 seconds or longer response times, the timekeeper background will turn from green to yellow, indicating you have 30 seconds left on the clock. You will see a red background when your time is up. We thank you in advance for making the job of our timekeeper easy by adhering to the time allotment. Please do not make us mute you. In the event that a candidate needs a question repeated, please ask and we will repeat the question. So now we will start our conversation with the candidates. The candidates will start by first introducing themselves and giving an opening statement. Joe will start, followed by Teresa, and then finally John. You each have 1 minute for your opening statement. Joe, when your mic is unmuted and the timekeeper gives you the green background, you may begin.
Thanks, Anna Marie. Good evening to you all. My name is Joe Buck. Thank you for taking the time to be here tonight to engage in this important local process. I grew up in Lake Oswego in Lake Grove. I'm the third generation owner of my local family business and a former member of the city council. I believe our city is strongest when we bring all voices to the table, when we lead with our values, and when we collaborate on the solutions that move us forward. Lake Oswego has never been a town to stand still. And whether you're recent to the community or lived here for a long time, you've witnessed the many improvements we're making, mostly recently to the physical infrastructure, our roads, the schools that we learn in, the pipes we drink our water from, and so on. Now we're at a time when the social fabric of our community needs that same attention. How will our community be more accessible to the wide variety of people it takes to have a successful city? How will we invest in a wide variety of a clean and healthy future? As mayor, I will be wholeheartedly dedicated to a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive future, to making Olo a true leader in sustainability, and to continuing to constantly educate myself on these topics and more. Thank you.
Teresa, I believe your mic is muted.
I apologize. I'm Teresa Kohlhoff, and I'm running to be mayor of Lake Oswego. Many in our community have not been given the same opportunities as others. Despite the success of many in our city, the disparity between those who have and those who have not continues to grow. Housing costs continue to rise, wages for many remain stagnant. We have been more concerned about the effects of increased property taxes on the homes of the very rich than about providing services requested by the community as a whole. Our role as a government is to provide infrastructure and needed community service. We need to act on the issues of housing affordability, climate change, transportation, and creating a more inclusive and diverse Lake Oswego. I've worked hard to establish relationships with other local government officials because whatever it is, even simply being a good neighbor, we are in this together.
Okay, my name is John Lamont. I'm a city councilor for Lake Oswego. I was born into a loving family of 5, which is a family of social workers. I chose city planning to be my profession because of the social influence, but also the growth and development of cities. I've worked with cities across the country, some of the most wealthy in the country, wealthier than even people think Lake Oswego is, and some of the most struggling communities, and have built consensus everywhere I go for a planned growth and a positive future. I've been in communities that have never had consensus, have never had anybody pay attention to them. They were communities of color, and we brought everybody to the table to get things done. In Lake Oswego, I want to continue our good government. We are blessed by a good government. We have a city management form of government, and I want to continue our high quality services, and I want to be more strategic and continue to get things done. But at my table, our community table as mayor, all will be welcome. Citizens, visitors, employees, businesses, and civic leaders. No one will be outside any discussion, and we will get things done. So thank you.
Each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer this question. We'll start with Teresa, then John, then Joe.
And Maya, can you get closer to your microphone? A little bit?
Yeah.
There you go.
The question is, on February 4th, 2020, the Lake Oswego City Council affirmed the following policy: welcoming and inclusive city. The City of Lake Oswego works to welcome and include all of our community's residents at city facilities, events, and meetings. We strive to ensure that city services are relevant and responsive to all residents and that all people can participate in city projects and decisions. Lake Oswego's economic, cultural, and political environment is made better when all people have access to city programs and services. How can we move the needle on this city's policy? Why? Tell us 3 things you would recommend and why. Teresa, when your mic is unmuted and the timekeeper gives you the green background, you may begin.
So we didn't just start in February of this year. We've had policy out there for some time, but as events continue to occur and as our understanding of what is working or doesn't work, what formulation really adequately describes what we're seeing, once we evaluate what has not happened. I mean, remember, I've been watching civil rights since the 60s, and then I was reading the other night where the people, when Obama had won, that they thought that the thing was over. So I ask you to see this as an ongoing action evaluation. But I think that clearly we have the DEI task force, which will conclude at the end of this year and have specific recommendations. But then in the next year, it's very clear that we need a standing advisory committee. And we will also have concluded a first look at community policing, and that has to also next year, when the one part concludes into this year, then that has to start more permanently in the new year. the whole.
Am I next?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. We have opened up minds through Respond to Racism and to respond to what is going on around the country. We need to continue to educate ourselves on what biases are and where things may or may not be working for folks of all color and all races and all religions and all backgrounds. So we have the DEI task force working. We want to see the results of their efforts. We are going to be working directly on the policing issue, and we'll find out where we are at. I think we have an advanced police department, but I'm sure we can do better. And so it's education and continue that, learning from each other. And we're going through DEI training right now as a council. We've done some earlier, and there's other things we can do. Our police department's doing a lot of training. There's more we can do. And then there's advocacy for us being, making sure that we let people know that we are and we don't tolerate discrimination and racism. And then also on the outside world, for folks that are wondering what we're all about, we do need to send that message out further and farther. So I would see pragmatic leadership when we get information from our task force and from our policing review, and then implementing that with the right leadership to get things done and to move things forward. The statement we put together was strong, and we just now to make sure other people know it and that we put words into action.
All right. Okay. Yes. So specific action is critical. I appreciate what the city has done with the statements, but thus far we've seen lots of words and not a lot of action. And I think we all know that diversity in and of itself is not equity and inclusion. So, you know, I am a white guy. I grew up in this community in Lake Oswego, a very white community, and I've worked to expand my own perspective through education and my own, you know, the social fabric of my own life. However, I am still a white guy that grew up in a predominantly white community. The DEI task force, which has been very limited in both its time and in its scope, needs to be made a permanent committee, and it needs to be looking at everything the city is doing to ensure that we truly are being have city services that are accessible to the wide variety of people that we do have here in Lake Oswego. So that for me is step one. Step two is providing access to people who traditionally, entrepreneurs of color especially, that haven't had access to opening businesses and access to capital in Lake Oswego, and partnering the city with the Chamber of Commerce and organizations like Business Oregon to provide those pathways to success for entrepreneurs of color, I think is very important in providing a wider variety of services. And also having trust and accountability within our police department to ensure that members of our BIPOC community in Lake Oswego are not being disproportionately targeted by the police. And that requires oversight, whether at the council level or some other level of community outside of city staff.
Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer this question. We'll start with John, then Joe, then Teresa. This question is from our LO students. Most climate scientists concur that if the world is not carbon neutral by 2050, we will reach the point of no return. To combat this harsh reality, this April, City Council voted to adopt the Sustainability and Climate Action Plan, Lake Oswego's roadmap for accomplishing its 30-year carbon neutrality goal. The Sustainability and Climate Action Plan includes short-term actions that must be taken, including 38 before the end of your term. The scope of these actions is broad, ranging from installing EV facilities to developing a rideshare forum. However, achieving these goals is necessary. How will you use your position on City Council to ensure that Lake Oswego completes the goals established by the Sustainability and Climate Action Plan? John, when your mic is unmuted and the timekeeper gives you the green background, you may begin.
When I first got on the council, well, actually before I got on the council, I was working intensively and extensively in sustainability for the work we were doing in the Planning Commission for the Healthy Ecosystem chapter of the new comprehensive plan. Then I got on council and was advocating to make sustainability an ongoing goal of this council. We then advocated for the climate actions, and I want to put more action in the climate actions because you can put them on paper and that's great, but are you really working on them? And then we just put together this new sustainability and climate action plan. We finally have a clear plan that a lot of good people put a lot of effort in. So one of the big jobs of the mayor of the next term will be to implement that plan and get these things going. Now, as you said, it can't be implemented overnight, but we've got to get a lot of actions in place to reach these bigger and broader goals. And at the municipal level, there's only certain things we can do, but once we do it and other cities do it, it starts to add up to a bigger impact on our environment to both get at climate change and to make sure we're protecting our natural resources. So I will be a big advocate. I will be pushing to make sure we are implementing that plan. As a planner, I do not like plans that sit on shelves. I've implemented a lot of plans, and those that know me know I'm action oriented and I get things done, and I'm pragmatic. So I will push that plan and not have it sit on the shelf and be ignored. So we've done a lot of good things in sustainability in the city with green energy, some electric charging stations more than are needed, new ride sharing approach, water meters that are automatic, et cetera, et cetera. But we could be the most sustainable city in Oregon if we do it right and follow the plan.
Okay, am I good to go? Okay. So the climate action plan, great comprehensive plan that the sustainability network worked on in cooperation with other community groups. But the issue, of course, like you're mentioning, is that it has not been implemented since it's been adopted. One issue that I will tend to as mayor is making sure that our sustainability coordinator at the city is empowered to do their job. Right now, we're seeing a lack of empowerment at that level, which is causing us to stall on. That's why we're seeing absolutely no action on the on our sustainability plan since its adoption. So we also, in addition to the sustainability coordinator, the city lacks a natural resource manager. And that's a position I firmly believe the city needs, so we can identify the resources we have, so we can know how to keep them healthy, and we can learn how to make our natural environment and ecosystem even healthier. I'd like to put together we've been focusing a lot on our roadway infrastructure over these past years, which in a lot of ways makes really good financial sense. Our roads are our biggest asset, and if we don't invest in maintaining them, then they will cost us even more down the road, leading to a drain in resources. But we're at a point where we're going to be able to very soon to invest in active transportation. I'd like to see a 10-year path to pathways, as I call it, that will include focusing on connections from our neighborhoods to our town centers and from our neighborhoods to our schools, first and foremost. It will also focus on connecting Lake Oswego to outside of Lake Oswego and transforming the trolley right-of-way along Highway 43 into a bike pedestrian path so people can finally safely walk and bike from Lake Oswego into Portland. So I think there's a lot we can do working together, but it starts with empowering our staff at the city level and making sure that we are budgeting the resources that we need to put this great plan into meaningful action.
So I think that the first thing that has to be done is a declaration of state of emergency, climate emergency. I agree with Ms. Zadato, I think, was the one that talked in terms of sustainability being looked at as three bottom lines, which, I don't know how they did that, whether it was a Venn diagram or just in the table form, but I look at it as like Russian dolls. So at the bottom is the economic issue, then the social issue, and over and above is the environmental issue. And I think that the climate emergency says that that is what is prioritized. I agree that resources suddenly got jolted in terms of COVID, and I would imagine that there will continue to be a certain level of chaos about our budget arising from that and its effects. But climate chaos continues. As it relates to the plan, I think that it's completely dreadful as it relates to tree preservation. And I believe that the tree canopy has global implications and must go in the development code. We are in a regional network that would allow for transit in cooperation, and that is just absolutely crucial that we work with TriMet, with Metro, hopefully with this bond being passed in order to get, actual transit for real people commuting and get out from under our lifestyle of using fossil fuels. I guess I had a few seconds more. The only other thing I would say is that I'm done.
Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer this question. We'll start with Joe, then Teresa, then John. The question is in 3 parts. Part 1. As the spread of the coronavirus continues, how do you plan to protect the city from an outbreak? Part 2. Given the pandemic, what economic help can the city provide to help low-income citizens stay in the homes, pay their utilities, and put food on their tables? And Part 3. What can the city do to help businesses keep their doors open? Joe, when your mic is unmuted and the timekeeper gives you the green background, you may begin.
Thank you. Great question. The most basic thing the city can do, and as a local business and as a restaurateur, I mean, we have been so deeply affected by the coronavirus, especially my workforce, the people who are a part of this community who come to work here every day in Lake Oswego, a lot of whom do not have the same safety net as everyone else through the unemployment benefits. So we have had to be kind of taking care of each other during this time. What all we have expected from the city is enforcement of the safety precautions that are keeping everyone safe and enabling us to keep our doors open, at least in some part. And I will say we have been met with quite the resistance from this. The city has done some things well, and I will give them credit for that. But when it comes to enforcing and being a leader and setting an example, even from some of our city leaders, we have not seen the right example being set, and we have not seen the city willing to come out and do the same thing my 16 and 17-year-old hosts are willing to do at the restaurant in terms of telling people to put a face covering on. So if we can expect our teenagers in the community to do it, I think we can expect adults in the community to do it as well. So that's the answer number 1. To help low-income residents, we've had to pool our resources together as a community, as a working community, to help others out, and we can do the same thing as a city. We also need to continue to support the resources like our local food pantry that provide the help for people in this community who are really having a difficult time right now. I'm sorry, what was the third part of the question?
What can the city do to help businesses keep their doors open?
Oh, and providing flexibility. Many different businesses have different needs. Right now, we want to be sure that everything we're doing is safe. Everything that we are doing, maintains the character of the town. But a lot of times there's red tape, frankly, that's just adds a lot of time that we do not have as businesses. We remember when businesses keep their jobs open, people stay in their work. And that needs to be the most important thing that we consider right now as we go forward. Thank you.
So let me just say from the start, a lot of things can't be done because we simply don't have the extra revenue. So we are working under some constraints. It's not just some magical trick that we have extra money to do various things. And that actually needs to instruct us as we think about what is really possible and what we're just saying. So you talked about what we could do with the outbreak, and I actually completely agree with Joe that we have to mandate not only the using of masks, but I think that the 50 group has kept me inside. I have not been able to go out in those large groups, and I'm sort of clueless as to why they seem to be existing without and against the guidance of the health. the low income people, and I would also add women in this, that is very concerning to me. The incentive type programs tend not to help them at all. So in getting at the housing issue or the food issue, where we do have extra money, or the direction of what resources we do have, I think that women and lower income people absolutely need that assistance as it relates to childcare and this debacle with the children at home, how you are going to take all that jumble, and they're going to be so behind by the time this stops. And then businesses, one side of me is a little, saying you did get CARES funding, but some of it wasn't particularly helpful for various reasons. So the businesses will have been helped, and they're in with everybody else to get further help.
Well, first of all, when COVID hit, the city reacted immediately and we created a team. It was the city manager's office, emergency operations group, and the city council. We had people wanting us to take different positions in different directions, but we spoke with one voice through our city manager. She immediately created an emergency order for us. We approved it that shut down city operations except for the essential operations. We also started working on our parks and open spaces to keep people socially distanced. And then eventually the governor's office, and very little out of the national level, but the governor's office caught up, as well as the county, to give us more specific direction from our health professionals. So when we got that additional direction, we closed things down more. We closed playgrounds, parks, trails, paths, and we basically followed the order of the governor, including when things are opening and the transition in. So people were told to wear masks inside, to walk into restaurants with masks. When they sit down, they don't have to wear them. They can eat with the mask off. We've kept people out of different assemblies. So overall, I think the city's been doing a great job in following the county and the governor's lead. As far as the low income folks, we had a write down on utility bills and some even forgiveness. We had our police department picking up meds, prescriptions for seniors to deliver them to their door instead of them having to come out. There may be some other things we could look at, and we have to be careful about different funding sources to make sure that works. But I think between residents and businesses, the state and the federal government need to do more. I know there's these one-shot checks that come, but people are suffering for months, if not almost a year. I hate to say it, it's almost a year. So when we gave grants to businesses that helped them, we channeled county grants to businesses to help them. And if we find more money or reimbursement from the feds or the state, we will help our businesses right away. And that is to keep the doors open, to pay some rent, to give the business owners some food if they can't get unemployment insurance. And we'll continue that. It's all the art of the possible of what we can do.
Right now, we will now take a 5-minute break. I want to remind the audience that our program goes until 6:30.
All right, everyone, welcome back. For the next few questions, we're going to do a lightning round. The way this will work is we'll read a question and you'll all respond at the same time by holding up a sign indicating if your reply is yes or no. There is no verbal response during the lightning round. Here we go. Lightning round number 1. Would you vote in support establishing a permanent diversity, equity, inclusion, and access commission or board? Yes or no? Did we get everyone? Okay. Lightning round question number 2. Would you vote for asking the city manager to publish all police stops by ethnicity and reason on a quarterly basis? Yes or no? Okay, I think we got everyone. Final question. Would you vote in support of lifting the restrictions on short-term rentals, such as Airbnbs, in multifamily or attached homes or rental homes? Yes or no?
What are the restrictions? And could you clarify?
There are no
I can
restrictions.
I can repeat the question.
Okay.
Would you vote in support of lifting the restrictions on short-term rentals such as Airbnbs in multifamily or attached homes or rental homes? Yes or no?
They're allowed.
It's just the question as I have it.
Thank you for clarifying that. I get you now.
Okay, so moving on to the next question. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer this 2-part question. We'll start with Teresa, then John, then Joe. This question is from our students. Okay, it's kind of hefty, so if you want me to repeat anything, feel free. Part 1. Lake Oswego is formerly known for being a sundown town and is now known for a history of racial discrimination. Do you think it is important to address the racist history of Lake Oswego, and how should we do so? Okay, part 2. Once you've talked about addressing our history in the next question is, Lake Oswego has a poor reputation around diversity, equity, and inclusion. What will you do to improve our city's operations and environment so that it is a better place for our Black, Indigenous, and people of color? Please be specific with your responses. Please answer both parts. How should we address our racist history, and how can we improve our city's operations and environment to make it better for our BIPOC members? Teresa, when your mic is unmuted and the timekeeper gives you the green background, you may begin.
So the racist history is somewhat known and somewhat still not known, or maybe it's continuing to understand it better. And I do think that that's an ongoing task. Every time I pick up a book, I'm just reading a new book called something like We Were in Power for 8 years. And there are things that I lived through that I had forgotten. And now, as other events have gone along, I go, oh, I see that differently than I saw it. So yes, we have to continue to look at what's happened and in light of whether and how it's relevant today, just not go back over the same old things. And to the extent that we could get everybody to Washington, D.C. to the, I think it's called the Museum of the African American, that would be amazing. That would be amazing. But yes, of course, we have to stay with that history and understand it's ongoing. Now, what we're going to do about it is, as we pointed out, there are things in the works. I think that it's really important that we keep our eyes and ears open because, for example, today in our training, we had a whole training on oppression. and whether or not our actions in the city ought to be directed by leading with race towards eliminating this oppression. And it was parts of it I had never heard of before, and I need to read more and think more. But, you know, as we were saying, some of this action, we take it, we see if it actually through data does any good, and we keep going from there.
My next? Okay. We do have a racist history, like many communities, counties, states around the country, and we have to learn from it, but we have to move on to where we want to be in the future. So our DEI task force is looking at a range of things, including should we have a permanent DEI advisory board or commission. When they get us our information, we'll go through that. I'm sure we're going to get some good information that we can build on from where we were a way long time ago to where we are now. And the same thing with policing. We're going to start out with what is constructive potential options that we have to improve ourselves and to make real change, not just talk about it. Enough with the talk, we need to really act. So I'm looking forward to the things that we're going to find out from the DEI task force. We've got a lot of discussions going on around City Hall, a lot of training, a lot of open minds, a lot of discussion of history. We are long past some of the history that people are reflecting on. It is illegal to discriminate in real estate and selling of property, but we can do better as far as being open in our day-to-day lives, being more loving and living together. So I think I'm ready to hear what the DEI task force has, what our facilitators have to say. I'm ready to get into a great discussion with our police officers about what we can do better, and then go from there and implement it.
I think it's important to recognize that if you are a BIPOC member of our community, there is no moving on from it right now, because they're still living in it right now, because nothing has changed. We have a system that was created through our government, its policies and practices, that has led to the fact that we have, especially with our Black community members, an extremely low percentage here in Lake Oswego. Even for a metropolitan area that already has a low percentage, it's even lower yet in Lake Oswego. And we have to recognize that, and recognize that it will be only through change in government policies and practices that will even start to reverse the catastrophic impact that those past decisions have had on our BIPOC community members, first and foremost. Specifically in Lake Oswego, we need to empower a permanent DEI committee, and that includes meaningful staff support on that committee. And that includes a council. When I say empower, that means that our mayor and city council will listen to the guidance. I was disappointed recently to see that the first recommendation our DEI task force made to the city council was turned down by the city council and sent back for rework. We need a DEI committee that is allowed to exist without the council's thumb on them at all times. We need to evaluate our police policies and practices, and we need to make a more accessible community, and that starts with housing. We cannot have equity in our community without housing for all the different types of people it takes to have a great community. That includes tracking the impacts of gentrification in our neighborhoods and the number of folks who are being priced out constantly of our community. Oh.
Each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer this question. We'll start with John, then Joe, then Teresa. The question is, the state legislature passed HB 2001, which requires zoning to allow fourplexes. This can provide greater density and more affordable housing. Will you support the building of fourplexes throughout the city? How should this law be implemented in Lake Oswego? John, when your mic is unmuted and the timekeeper gives you the green background, you may begin.
As most people know, we voted 7-0 to not support this legislation. And for two reasons. One is that it usurped our home rule power, and that is us being able to take care of our own zoning and our own development in our own neighborhoods. And two, as a city planner, I've been involved in preserving neighborhoods all over the country and at all levels. Little bungalow neighborhoods where I grew up in Chicago, to wealthy neighborhoods, to large lots, to townhouses, multifamily. And the idea is to preserve the character of those neighborhoods, unless, like when I worked in Gary, Indiana, where we needed to rebuild and revitalize these neighborhoods. And so when the state legislature says you're going to squeeze in duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes into single family neighborhoods, that people voted with their feet. They bought into those neighborhoods, even if they're smaller housing and not wealthy, and then say you have to take the density. And after it started, the state legislature said it wasn't for affordable housing, it was for density, is wrong. We don't have the infrastructure. The single family neighborhoods we're trying to preserve, we downzone forest highlands, we downzone uplands, and we got control of the flag lots. So we should have had the state legislature, the counties and cities working on our commercial corridors that are overgrown with retail and bringing new multifamily housing opportunities onto those corridors near bus lines and shops and services. So I am against 2001. It's been passed. So what we need to do now is find out how we make the minimum amount of impact on our neighborhoods by allowing this kind of density.
Well, House Bill 2001 is state law. We will not move forward by standing against it. It is what is in front of us. And frankly, it has come about because we as a region have grown much faster than the number of units our communities have been willing to produce. And that is causing a dramatic increase in housing, and that is impacting the least fortunate members of our wider community the most. We, even in our community, when we look to put multifamily complexes in areas where you think they belong, such as in our town centers, on transportation lines, like Councilor Lamont is saying, even just recently, both John and Teresa voted against a multifamily complex going into Long Meadows, along a transportation corridor in the commercial area. And when we say no to more housing in Lake Oswego, when we say no to multifamily housing in Lake Oswego, we continue to displace the least fortunate people among us and drive up the cost of housing. So House Bill 2001 is here to kind of force the issue a little bit. But we value the character of our single family neighborhoods. So it is about looking at the right locations. Foothills development in foothills where we can have a place for our seniors to retire and our workforce to live. The Southwest employment area that can be made more into a live work area where we can put more dense multifamily housing, as well as downtown Lake Oswego and along Boone's Ferry, and looking at areas of the town where we can allow duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes that make sense, where there's a transportation connectivity. But it will require a robust and involve the neighborhoods and community discussion to go forward.
So I've heard John say this before, and I'm going to have to look it up what I said, because I do agree with John that House Bill 2001 was not my favorite, in that I don't like preemption, and it did take away home rule, and I would never like that. But in terms of its result or how we're going to deal with it, I don't think it's catastrophic. So the question was, do I approve of fourplexes in all parts of the city? It all depends on how that's designed, and does it fit in? Do we have the infrastructure? It sounds like those sorts of details are being worked out now by the people at the state, and we will be able to have a lot to say about how that works out. So some spots yes, some spots not. I mean, certainly we're not going to ghettoize the four. Oh my. ADUs are similar to duplexes in that they are the internal ones. I don't see any real problem personally with that part of it. I think that Joe, however, if he's talking about the Schornstein thing over there, John and I voted against that. That was not affordable housing, friends, at all. We voted against that because we're going to take out all these trees unnecessarily. So, and I would vote that way again.
Moving on to the next question. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer this question. We'll start with Joe, then Teresa, then John. The question is, in your personal or professional life, what specific actions have you taken to reduce pollution, toxics, and climate emissions? What will you do in the future? Joe, when your mic is unmuted and the timekeeper gives you the green background, you may begin.
So I am a big advocate for active transportation, both in my life on the council and in my personal life. So just on a daily basis, I try to eliminate as many car trips as possible and this is a thing of privilege, being able to walk and or bike to work and to other errands that I have to do throughout town. And up until this summer, I was also riding my electric skateboard, but then I fell in a construction area, and now I'm scared to ride the electric skateboard. But maybe one day I will come back on the skateboard. I make choices in my personal life to minimize my carbon footprint as best I can in terms of the products that I use. But my biggest impact, I think, is in my professional life and my businesses. My restaurants were inaugural members of the Leaders in Sustainability program, certified at the highest level. That's a triple bottom line program where we look at our social practices, our sustainability practices, and our fiscal practices. And it's an educational program that benefits me, personally, and that I learned a lot from it, but also everyone that works within the businesses as well. It's been a successful program throughout the town. So those are the main things that I do in my personal life, aside from, good sustainable choices, not using reusable. I will not use a reusable coffee cup. I think they should, in fact, I think they should be outlawed, the reusable coffee cups, when you get, especially in a sit-down environment.
So that's a really good question, because my husband and I don't really have a lot of needs. We're healthy and we tend to just use and reuse and don't really need to buy much more. Unfortunately, we have grandchildren and they know to take grandma to Bridgeport. So I suppose I do spend money there. We really do keep up our house and keep a lot of effort put into seeing to it that the filters are changed, that we're using our resources well. And that's actually not new. I mean, I'm of the age where we were sticking a brick in our toilets, to make sure we didn't use too much water. So we're pretty much in gear. I'm a gardener. I would say till the campaign started and the fires and whatnot, I had a really good garden. I just go out there and eat and bring stuff in. Composting, been composting for 50 years. So it's a continuation, trying to learn as we go along. And we don't drive all that much, and we try again to looking forward maybe to get an electric vehicle. Haven't quite gotten to that point, but I think that's next on the list. And that'll be it.
As a city planner, my whole career, I've worked across the country in sustainability for many years, from Superfund sites to brownfield sites to transit-oriented development. And I've done a lot of work in transit and transit-oriented development around the country. And that's an area where you really can consolidate density and get people out of cars and walking and getting to trains. As far as Lake Oswego, I've been advocating from the beginning of my career on the city council for sustainability and for increasing our bus service. When I was on the parking committee for the Lake Grove Management of Parking Committee, we painfully found out how bad the bus service was and employees couldn't really use it. I've been nagging and advocating that we get at TriMet to find out why they can't implement their plan. We had them come to the Planning Commission, and it was a really good plan to disconnect the bad routes, reconnect, and make new routes, especially picking up folks that lived east and west of us that wanted to come to our 19,000 jobs in our city. But nobody has knocked on the door at TriMet. If I become mayor, I will get TriMet to the table and say, why are you not improving our bus service and getting it done so we can get more people into the buses and not driving? I stood in the Zupans parking lot one day when we were going through the parking management plan, and the employees were crossing the street and coming down the street because they were parking in the area rather than taking the bus. And I knew the answer, but I said, why didn't you take the bus? They said, it's not reliable. And the bus service overall in Lake Oswego is not reliable. So we need to change that. We need to keep looking at our green energy and our electric vehicles.
Anne Marie,
Yes.
could you ask the first lightning round question again, please?
Okay. The first lightning round question was, would you vote in support establishing a permanent diversity, equity, inclusion, and access commission or board? Yes or no?
I have no sign for maybe.
Okay, go ahead, Anne Marie.
Perfect. So we've reached our closing statements. Each candidate will have 60 seconds for their closing statement. Teresa will begin, and then John, and then Joe. Teresa, please begin.
So recently, someone told me that I was just too liberal. I've had folks say this to me as a criticism before, but I wear that as a badge of honor because I am people-centric. Every aspect of my work the past 3.5 years has been to increase the dignity of life for the people who live in Lake Oswego. Obi-Wan Kenobi said, only a Sith deals in absolutes. As mayor, I will lead with data, logic, and empathy. As a leader, it is incumbent on me to approach every challenge with an open mind and bring voices from all over the city to work with us. Together, we will continue to put people first and focus on practical solutions to our common problems. I believe we together are formidable.
One of my opponents has called me a racist and that I'm anti-DEI, which could be nothing further from the truth. I'm the son of a social worker who grew up listening to him working in the neighborhoods of Chicago on the South Side before President Obama was there. I grew up as wanting to help people and do consensus building. I've done more work in DEI and sustainability in 1 month than my opponents together have done in their careers. I've brought consensus and positive change to communities of color, to communities that are struggling, that communities that needed a voice. And I will continue to do that as a mayor. I will bring everybody to the table and we will work on what we can do to accomplish things at our municipal level to make our great city even better. We are an awesome city. We can do better. We will do better. And we need a leader that's going to bring everybody together and will get things done while they're listening to everybody's voice. And that's what I want to be as mayor: chief advocate, chief facilitator, chief strategist, and chief get things done.
I'd like to go back real quick, and I meant to say no disposable cups. I like the reusable cups. Let me just clarify that. So all of us here in LO, we are all connected by this place, not by preferences or views. So it's the city itself that unites us. And in a community that has so much, it's easy to think that our validity is dictated by possession. But it's really defined by how we act and how we work together, how we come together to solve problems and be good stewards of both a respectful community dialogue and as guardians of our future for the next generations. This is the Lake Oswego that I know. This is the Lake Oswego that will come together to emerge from the pandemic, from our recent disasters, and from a reconciliation with a present and a past that is leading us to an inclusive equitable future and the Lake Oswego I believe in going forward. There is no one solution or one person who alone can do this all. Despite our differences and the sometimes passionate campaign rhetoric, I know and the care that John and Teresa have for LO, we will need each one of you here for the changes that are coming before us. And I'd be honored to be your mayor, your facilitator of the community dialogue, and the open ear for each one of you in the years to come. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to start the wrap up. We'd like to we're very honored that you're here participating and willing to engage with these questions related to diversity and equity and inclusion and sustainability, which matter so much to our citizens. And I can say we are so lucky to have 3 such outstanding and strong candidates step forward to put themselves in front of us and offer to represent us and serve as mayor. If audience members have questions for the candidates, their website addresses are on the YouTube page of the video. And in addition, there's information about our 2 groups, Respond to Racism and the Lake Oswego Sustainability Network. So thank you very much. And over to you, Willie.
In some cases, a forum like this culminates with endorsements. Our 2 organizations do not endorse political candidates. We encourage you, the audience members, to write letters to the editor following tonight's forum so that the broader community can get a sense for who you felt spoke well to the issues that are important to you. The next Respond to Racism meeting will be in November, and it will be on November 2nd from 6:30 to 8:30. It's the day before Election Day. Please register on that website at respondtoracism.org for the Zoom link. We hope that you can join us. If you want to sign up for Lake Oswego Sustainability Newsletter and to learn about their activities, please go to their website at losn.org. Thank you so much. Please vote, and good night.
Thank you.
And one final thing, we also have a second candidate forum for the city council candidates coming up next week on the 14th.
Okay.
Okay, and we are clear.